us in an invocation, please.
Bow your heads, Heavenly Father, bless us as we gather here today for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we may work together for the good of all. Help us to be positive in our outlook and wise in our decisions. Almighty God, give us the strength and courage to faithfully carry out our duties here today and always. We ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas pledge, please.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. And good morning to everyone, and I'm so happy to see almost all of y'all. And I would have been here like 5 minutes earlier, but Peter stopped my parking in the parking lot, trying to reverse him, and then Paul Chapa's telling me, I'm so sorry, Jerry, I'm so sorry that Peter's trying to park that. And he had a Volkswagen, one of those smart little vehicles. Anyway, Irene, would you please do the a roll call, please?
Sure.
It's gonna be a long meeting.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, ma'am.
Jerry Garcia, Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Luis Elizondo, Vice Chairman.
Present.
Leo Gonzalez, Secretary.
Here.
Armando Chapa.
Here.
Caitlin Shoup. Gabriela Hilpo. Butch Poole.
Here.
Kevin Kishnick.
Here.
Ramiro Canales.
Here.
Don Cossey.
Here.
Melissa Vela. Tom Wheat.
Here.
And Terry Noack. We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone that has signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
No, ma'am. All right. Thank you very much, Irene. And on item number 6, we're gonna go to a discussion or action consent agenda unless someone wants me to pull something from this item number. I will accept a motion to accept as prepared for us.
So moved.
Mr. Chapa makes the motion. A second, please.
Second.
LA seconds it. Any discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Item number 7 is discussion or auction or action audit on homestead exemptions. I guess this is what we call my friend Paul Chapa.
Sir.
We've already paid you for all of this stuff, right, Paul?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
It's
good.
all
So
been
you get your
paid,
time.
and the results are coming in now, so it's good. It's all good. First of all, I told Pete you were doing so good. You were on partnership track until this morning. I'm sorry, Pete, but after the meeting today, we're parting ways. I'm kidding. Pete is a great guy. I'm going to bring him up here in just a second to talk about homestead exemption analysis and the results we've been able to achieve on behalf of Nueces County. But before I do, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you to the board for entrusting us with this project. You're going to see the results have been fantastic, and we appreciate the opportunity. Also want to thank Mr. Canales and his staff. Got a very professional, very knowledgeable, very easy to work with crew, and it's been a great partnership. And again, you'll see those results in a little bit. On a personal note, I also wanted to extend my sincere condolences to all the board and the staff here for the passing of Robert Adler, who was a great friend of mine as well for over 30 years. He was truly a gentleman and a great man, and he will be missed. Some of you were on the board with Mr. Adler 10 years ago when we first came to the appraisal district to start the pilot project for homestead exemption analysis. You were the first in the state, first client of our law firm, one of the first to do this statewide, and you're going to see that the results are even better than they were back then. You recall that project took about 3 years, and we came back, reported to the board at that time. The results were more than $2.5 million in additional tax revenue that came in from those homesteads that were improperly shielded by the exemption, and over $500 million in value added to the rolls at the time. Pete's going to come up here and he's going to show you that the results are even better this time. Again, thank you for the opportunity to serve. Anything we can do, please let us know. With that, I'll turn it over to Pete. Pete, come on up.
Thank you, Paul. As I said, I guess I should worry if he stops giving me a hard time. In any case, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Canales, and others in attendance. Thank you for the opportunity to present the results of our homestead exemption. It used to be called audit. Who wants to be audited? We now call it analysis. So if you have in front of you the handout, if anybody needs one that doesn't have it, please let us know. Okay, so looks like you do, so you can follow along with me. The first thing I thought I would give you as a reminder, especially for those folks who might not have been around at the last meeting where we spoke, is kind of an overview of our process, but this time we've actually filled in what we've done. And we kicked this project off in August 2020. I remember those were the days when you couldn't go into a room without somebody taking your temperature. So it was, it's amazing how time flies, and through the pandemic, it's been challenging, but we've been able to stay right on track. In that month, we acquired the data from the appraisal district, and we ran a computerized search against data that we get from a vendor for things like driver's licenses, motor vehicles, registration, other property ownership, corporation records, other things that might indicate whether or not a person has an invalid homestead. And the three categories that you'll see in this report are that people who are deceased and may still have the deceased individual, and oftentimes with an over 65 exemption on the property. They don't bother to change the ownership records on the house. The other category that most people think of is double homesteads or multiple homesteads, and that's when a person has, within or outside Texas, an exemption or a benefit in other states that requires primary residence. The general rule being you can only have one primary residence. That defines it. So we look for folks who might have claimed 2 primary residences. And then third, we look for people who, and for accounts where it doesn't appear that the individual who is the account owner actually lives at the property, which is one of the statutory requirements for the homestead exemption. It has to be your primary residence. And this oftentimes involves someone who has a property of lesser value that they may live in, and then a very expensive vacation home. And they will make an economic decision, especially if there are high rates and high exemptions in the vacation jurisdiction. They'll say, I'll put my one exemption on this property. Well, until the legislature changes something, that's not a viable homestead, because it has to be on the place where you primarily reside, even if it earns you less of a financial benefit. So when we scored the 68,000 accounts, we came up with a list of, and I'll tell you the numbers exactly, but we came up with a list of accounts that were suspect in some way. And then we have a team of researchers in Houston who get those hits and eliminate obvious false positives, things where somebody has transposed a name, or just there's all kinds of cases that can be ruled out just with arm's length examination. And what remains are those that there's still a question about whether or not the homestead exemption is valid. And we send mailings to those suspect cases. In this case, there were 1,100 initial letters plus 474 certified mail follow-ups. Now, we send mail to not just the address that's the situs address, but also to any other address, the mailing address listed with the CAD, or any other address we discover, so that we're sure that we're doing the maximum we can to reach out to the taxpayer. And we ask in these letters, which are very non-accusatory, just raise the question about the homestead. We ask them to call a call center that we've got set up. It's dedicated for Nueces. It's in Houston. And we also take contacts through inbound calls only. We're not calling people or initiating the contacts other than through the mail. And we take emails, faxes, carrier pigeon. We get things by all different sorts of interactions. 804 telephone calls or conversations that may have been one or more calls with taxpayers, and 118 non-telephone contacts or what we've undertaken. And what happens then is, once we're satisfied that the homestead appears not to meet the legal qualifications for a homestead, we send it to the chief appraiser and his staff, where the statutory prerogative to remove or not remove lies. And what we find is that mostly they're removed. In the 90s percentile of the things we recommend are removed. the biggest exception to that rule is when someone ignored the certified mail, we give them 35 days, ignored the regular mail, we give them 35 days. And when they finally are contacted by the appraisal district, they wake up and say, wow, I need to take care of this. And oftentimes, like there are with the larger body of cases, there's an innocent explanation. Oh, well, we got divorced and I never recorded the property, that's why, but she got it in the divorce, that sort of thing. So we work through those situations in a way that's designed to not be antagonistic to the taxpayers. If the appraisal district makes the recommendation to remove the homestead exemption, we also provide information and documentation of which years were affected by this invalidity. And the statute allows up to 5 years of correction. It used to be 10, but it can be as much as 5 years of back underpayments that have to be accounted for. And so these are transmitted through a supplement, which is a term of art for a change in the tax rolls. They're sent to the tax office. And then the tax office prepares and sends supplemental bills for those exemptions removed by the CAD. Okay, so that's an overview of our process. Did anybody have any questions about what I just explained?
Pete, let me ask you, as you're doing statewide searches, and you said that other states, every other state in the union coordinates with Texas?
Well, the data source that we use includes property ownership records from every state, and it'll have what's called a flag on it if it's has either a homestead exemption or a homestead-ish exemption. So, for instance, in Colorado, we'll see that a person has an over 65 and disabled exemption. We know and that requires them to assert primary residence there, and that would be they need to have the exemption where they actually live. So and sometimes it turns out that it's not a removal from Corpus Christi, from Nueces rather. It's a removal in the other jurisdiction,
Right,
because that's the place where they have the apparently invalid homestead. And in those cases, they come up fairly often. We ask them to make an effort to straighten it out and show us that they've at least contacted them and let them know, so that on a going forward basis there aren't two exemptions. And then we close the case if their Nueces
And they can
exemption
keep
is
their
valid.
homestead here in Nueces County.
In such an instance, yes.
If they relinquish the homestead somewhere else.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
And Texas is very generous, and so typically we see a lot of other states' exemptions coming off, because especially for the over 65s, the homestead exemption can be very, very valuable. So when we identify a property, we have used the tax rates and other information for the preceding 5 years to calculate what the bill is likely to be up until the date that we calculate it. So there may be a slight overstatement in these amounts because some of these may have been paid and the interest stops running. We don't reconcile it continuously. We're doing that at the end of the project, which is almost here. So, but these numbers are pretty solid, and we've seen that even though we at this point may be overstating the interest that's due, by the time they get through the pipeline, these numbers turn out to be pretty accurate. So we're pretty confident in our methodology, which says that the potential additional taxes and interest payable to Nueces County taxing units is $3.59 million. And we charge $7 per homestead, a flat fee. We're not doing this on a commission or a contingency basis. And so our fee was roughly $420,000 for this project. So the net after the fee to the taxing units is $3.17 million so far. That last bullet describes, we really wanted to come back at the 2-year mark from getting the data, but there's still some trailing stuff that could add up to a significant amount of money. And what those are is mainly cases that are in the no response mode, and we're just waiting it out. And we wanted to get this to you now. I will present this same report with final numbers once those have cleared the pipeline. There are 241 of those in progress, and for calculating the potential revenue, we assumed that they had, half of them had a 2-year removal and half of them had a 3-year removal. And that's reflected in the figure of up to 1.3 million if these were all to be removed. In any case, all of these will be sent to you, and I'm sorry that we're not quite there yet, but we're very, very close. We're through the initial phases. Any questions on that document? Okay, I think the next one may be of special interest to the board members. that this is, we break out the revenue that's attributable to each jurisdiction, and we also account for 2609D, that's a section of the tax code, interest for, and the way it works is that if I underpaid in 2017, then the next February 1st, where I have 180 days to pay, interest starts to run at 1% a month. And so that's included in here, and we adjust it for each case according to what the particular situation is in terms of how many years and the tax rates and all that. As you can see, the total is that 3.585 million that we brought to you earlier. These are ranked in terms of the benefit financially to the taxing units, and obviously with the generous exemptions that attend school districts and over 65s freezes, the school district, as is typical, is the entity that benefits more than any other. You can see that there's more than $1 million in that. And city and the county are also big ones, and that makes sense when you consider the amount of money that's saved on exemptions. Okay. So, any questions about our methodology or the specific?
Yeah, I
facts?
have a question. Since almost 50% is deceased cases, right? So the majority of stuff is when people die. What would you think would be something where we basically on a because you have to actually catch it, right? So that's a lot of effort, and you probably still miss some. And so I'm thinking deceased is something that's recorded. So is there anything long-term that we can look into where our system clicks in or your system clicks in that you have that somehow automatically, if for lack of a better word, 10 years ago that wouldn't have worked, right? But we're getting to that point that maybe so you can be linked to something where we have those deaths?
I think that for the appraisal district to do it, it would involve setting up a relationship with the Department of Human Services or the Vital Records. And that can be kind of cumbersome, and it requires a lot of legal gobbledygook to get there.
Okay.
Where we get our death records are basically from a third-party provider who picks them up from credit headers, from obituaries, from all other conceivable sources other than the official state death records. And I wasn't certain that I was going to bring this up, and it certainly will bear more conversation later, but we are actually, in another client, we're trialing what we're calling a maintenance program, which means that we try to catch the homestead as it goes bad, or 1 year into it at most. Now, clearly what's going to happen is that you have many fewer big tax bills and interest being paid, but you put the property back on the roll in short order, and going forward, although it's hard to estimate, you see that money coming in on a continuing basis. And what that involves is doing this check once a year, and trying to pick up those that we missed the first time, or that might have gone bad, as we say, during that period. And we think that it poses a number of benefits for the appraisal district in terms of public relations and relations with taxpayers, in that you're not going to be hitting them with as large a back tax bill. Rather, you're going to be saying, until you get this fixed, you don't get this exemption. So, new applications and ones are really the ones we're looking at in that process. So that's a conversation that I hope to have with Mr. Canales, and if he wants us to come and explain it to the board, we'd be happy to do so. So.
Your time's up.
I got buzzed off the stage. Which of the judges didn't like me? Did that answer your question?
Yes and no. I think I'm not so worried about the multiple or any of the ifs. I'm really just looking at the deceased, since it's 50% of the lost revenue there.
Right.
And I really just, it's more of a question of systemizing it on the long run, because that's something no one can hide. And I agree with you in terms of vital statistics might be hard to get to. I don't know how the legal implications are, but I mean, both of them are public entities, like the tax office is too. So it's a different, question overall why they are not linked, So I guess that's more my avenue, my.
Well, I can tell you, I've looked into this, because those are the gold standard as far as death records go, but they only if you get them, you're only getting the state of Texas. And what we have oftentimes is somebody's moved to stay with an in-law or a child of theirs, and they die in Florida or someplace else. You would not get that. We have considered and ultimately decided that there was not enough marginal utility to getting that information directly from the vital records. There is a statutory allowance that any public official in the execution of their official duties can get access to those records, which are normally closed. They close them down because there's a lot of immigration fraud that attends people finding babies who die or otherwise, and so it's a sort of a complex legal matter to get those records, and I'm not sure that they're that much better than the national records that we're pulling in on death, but we can certainly have that conversation. And it's with that, as with this original project, you have to consider that what we do is full service in terms of having people answering calls and sending letters and all that. You would probably, if you wanted to take it in-house, try to stand up or duplicate those efforts, but with internal staff.
I mean, I'm even talking about your system in terms of, it's amazing to me that if people die off, you can't catch it, you know? I mean, because that's recorded somewhere. And
It is.
in former times, I understand that completely. But nowadays, it's not like we have to drive to Colorado or drive to anywhere.
Right,
you know?
no, I understand.
So that's a little bit just for future reference.
Okay.
That's just, I mean, even if you guys do it, you probably do it better, but maybe systemize it on a yearly basis, because that's half the revenue right there, and the other stuff is much harder to prove. The
Yes, it is.
disease not
Those
a
are the ones that
question,
we
you know.
do first
Yeah,
because they are the easiest, and
that's
you're
a
either
given.
dead or you're not.
yeah, exactly.
I don't mean to be crass about it, but
Exactly,
it's a lot easier to determine than the question of whether or not you actually spend, it's your primary
Yeah,
residence.
exactly.
And those are the iffiest cases, the ones that they don't have. Double homesteads are the next easiest to prove because it's two discrete facts.
Yeah.
Primary residence is
Probably partially not worth the effort.
well, I think it's worth the effort. We pull in but it requires the most work, and we don't really think we want to give that up. But in terms of if we went to a maintenance project, it would hit all three categories again. So the deaths that you're interested in would be covered and presumably picked up on the first cycle, and as well as the other categories. So that's the way we've structured that program. Does that, anything else on that? No? Okay, thank you.
Probably one of the other problems with it is too, we've discovered this when we've had back assessments at the tax office and talking to people, is a lot of people aren't doing obituaries anymore like they used to. And so a lot of that would get picked up from the obituaries, and people just aren't doing it anymore because, the paper's not really
Yeah.
being read like it used to. And some are doing it online, some of the funeral homes are doing it, but not all the time.
Yeah, I think that probably has made it a little bit more challenging, because we, in the olden days, meaning before 10 years ago, it was a regular practice to scan the obituaries and compare them to the homesteads, but again, where do you do that now? There's not really a centralized resource like there was in the days of the Strong daily paper. So the removal details are where I'm presuming you got the nearly 50%, and this is just a breakdown by category of the removals that we've recommended so far. What's interesting is that 215 of the accounts had more than the maximum years of removal, that we couldn't go after or achieve anything more than 5 years. Now, the question that arises from that is, why didn't you catch them when you did the project 5 years ago? Well, this data constantly shifts in terms of, we'll learn about a death from 4 years ago today. And so it's kind of a moving target, and that's what accounts for those 5 pluses, for the most part, not being caught when we did this project 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So the next pages. Did anybody have any questions about those details on those removals? No? Okay. The next page the next pages are just maps that plot where the removals were relative to ISDs and to cities. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You obviously see a concentration in and around Corpus Christi ISD, which jibes with their being the largest beneficiary. I mean, most of the removals by some factor were there. As you compare it to like Banquet ISD, there's probably 6 or 7 out there, and they're just not going to have as much at stake. But we can get you more specific information, but we thought this kind of overview map would be revealing and interesting. So the exemption removals by city are on the next page. And again, pretty self-explanatory. And then we take, on the next page after that, we zoom in on that Corpus Christi jurisdiction, which is where the main concentration is. This is the same data you see on the broader city map, but just zoomed in on Corpus. And we can do that for any other jurisdiction you may be curious about. We can provide you the lists of those that we've recommended, anything like that. We'll work with the appraisal district to fulfill whatever you all need on that. So, well, I guess I'm about ready to wrap it up. Just some final thoughts. In addition to the revenue that's generated from past underpayments, there's also a significant factor of getting this value back on the rolls, so that going forward, until somebody puts a valid homestead exemption on it, there's an amount that we can't measure that this project will return to the taxing units in future years from having bad homestead exemptions removed. Like Paul, I wanted to thank you, the board, for supporting what has evolved from a relatively new business function into really a best practice for appraisal district. And this is where it all started. And we were really happy and excited to be able to do a repeat. We didn't know what we would find, but it's affirmed for us that at least every 5 years, you're going to find a significant amount, enough to pay for the process of looking for it. The other thing I will point out is that I think 0.78 or 0.79% of the homesteads that we examined actually ended up being removed. So that's less than 1 in 100, or being recommended for removal. So what that says, that's a comparatively low quotient of invalid exemptions relative to the overall number of exemptions. So what we can conclude is that Nueces CAT is doing a good job of keeping the rolls clean, and Nueces residents are substantially informed and compliant about their homestead exemption eligibility. So there are those needles in the haystack, which we hope to help you find, but for the most part, you guys are in pretty good shape compared to the other 15 or so appraisal districts where we do this kind of work. I don't know whether you have any questions. There was supposed to be a slide that said questions, but I can just improvise. Questions?
Pete, when they, when you're doing your research, did you find an error, a transposed name or something like that? Is that reported? Is that turned over to the appraisal district to?
No, because that's just kind of noise. That's kind of static. In other words, we'll get a lot of what are called junior-senior mismatches that the computer algorithm won't catch and distinguish between them, although we're trying to get it to do more of that, so we don't have to do it manually. But when someone starts to look over the records, they say, oh, there's 2 of them. And so they can each have an exemption, because somewhere it picked up a junior and a senior with the same name and identified them as duplicates. So we don't really send anything along.
Well, I'm talking about a true error where, something is wrong. Somebody's name is misspelled or something. Is that turned over, to correct it on the permanent roll?
Well, we really don't find instances of that. In terms of, we assume and find that the appraisal district records are clean. We do some parsing, separating out of first and last names, owner 1, owner 2,
Okay.
but for the most part, we're not picking up errors that call for a correction of the appraisal district's records other than an improper homestead. So, and that initial process of weeding out the false positives is what I was just describing,
Okay.
which is you look at it and you say, we don't need to look any further into this one. And so we do that so that we don't go to the expense or the bother of contacting taxpayers where there's an easy explanation that accounts for what it is that we're noticing.
Peter, as this comes to a conclusion this year, you all renew it, continue your process for next year?
Well, that's a discussion to be had. The contract called for us to do this one and done, like we did 5 years ago, on a pilot at no expense. This bears on what I was describing a moment ago, which is if you wanted to get in maintenance mode, what we're basically doing is offering it at 1/5 the cost.
That's where I was going. So there is some sort of maintenance that we can do at this point.
Yeah, and we envision kind of a subscription model where we don't have to come out and sell you every 5 years. We'll check in and keep it current.
And
But
do you have that formula in intact already, or are you is that a work in progress?
Well, one appraisal district that we deal with and did a big project for has included in their budget going forward. And we are actually in almost the second year of a trial that we're doing in Cameron, which is a client where we did a big project too. And we're doing that for them. And it's almost to the point where we're ready to talk to them about whether they want to sign up for this subscription. But it's working, and it's proven to do what we hoped it would.
Do we have that information available here yet, or not?
I can certainly get it to you. And I don't know the protocol, I
The
guess.
maintenance program that you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think that, would it be the proper place for me to send it to Mr. Canales
Yes,
first?
sir,
And
please.
okay, and I think we're going to be at a legal seminar at some point together, and perhaps we can talk more then this month, so,
The latter part of the month.
yes, sir.
Great.
Chairman, my recommendation would actually be to do this kind of on an annual basis.
Can't hear you.
My recommendation would actually be to do this on an annual basis because it puts less stress
Yeah, that's what.
of a burden on the
That's why we
taxpayers
wanted to do
themselves.
this. So we're gonna get that information to Ronnie, and then we can just bring it to conversation next meeting, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I can tell you that roughly at the pricing that we've decided we need to do, it would be, it's $1.50 a year per record examined, rather than $7 if we wait 5 years. So over the 5 years, you may spend a little bit more, but there's a lot of benefit too. It's $7.50 over 5 years versus $7.
Okay.
And there, you get budget predictability and a lot of other things. You're not swallowing a $420,000 pill either, so,
Okay,
okay.
great. Thank you so much,
Thank
Peter.
you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Paul, do you have anything else for us, or are we done with this presentation?
I think we're good. We will get Pete's car moved from the parking lot.
That's all right, we already got a tow truck.
Again, I just want to say thank you to all the board. Mr. Elizondo? Yes, sir.
I know you're a very generous man, and I saw you, Ronnie, walking to his car earlier. Did you bring some pastries and he take them to the car instead, or what?
No. Mr. Canales told me his practice is to provide breakfast and lunch for the board. I hope that's true. I don't know.
He's just been collecting fees for that. He hasn't actually used anything.
Didn't specifically tell you which board. Mention the word board, that's it.
But thank you again for your time. Again, you know, the results, almost 10 times your investment is what you're going to see, or the taxing entities are going to see here. The maintenance project, like Pete said, will run probably about $80,000 a year in that range, but it's going to be well worth it. And like Kevin said, it's really going to benefit your taxpayers where they don't have the burden of 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for your time today. Have a great meeting. We appreciate everything.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
as far as the exemptions and things like that, that's already been processed and gone through the tax office, or not yet?
Not all of them. The majority have. Is
Yeah,
that
we
right,
got-
Pete? But not all of them. Some of them are less than a year that we just picked up.
Yeah,
Do you
I
wanna
mean,
answer?
we don't have visibility into that supplemental process, but I'm assuming that you're getting supplements based on these.
We've seen some.
Yeah.
I was curious, how many, I mean, you've turned the data over to the appraisal district.
Yes,
So,
so.
yeah,
Yeah, and then we
they've been-
flip it over to you.
There's a
process. It'll take
Yeah.
a little time for some.
Yeah, and part of that is reviewing our work and making sure that it meets the appraisal district's standards for removal, which is, again, the chief appraiser is given broad statutory authority to remove them. And we've had chief appraisers who want to set the bar really high before they
Yeah.
remove an exemption. So but that's beyond our process.
Well, I knew we'd been getting them because I'm usually the one who has these conversations with the taxpayers, so.
Is it because during the
As well it
process,
should be.
during the process that they do the work, our staff and myself really do not interact with any of these taxpayers. It's very rare that we do. I think that's done by Kevin and these guys, well, actually Peter and his staff, and that takes us a lot away from what we normally do. If we were to be doing what these guys are doing, it would cost us a lot more in manpower. And the maintenance agreement, if it's about 80,000 or so, that'll also help us with the manpower here in the office. Things are changing every year, and we hope to continue to get better service from the law firm.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you, guys.
And with that, thank you for the presentation, man. Truly appreciate it, and for thanking you ahead of time for giving that paperwork to Ronnie, and let's
Yes,
just
sir.
move on with this.
Thank you for your time, and if I may be excused, I'm driving back to Austin, so
We'll talk in the
thank
parking
you
lot.
also for. I need to get a driver and take my car out.
Uber.
Thank you, man, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
next
guys.
item on the agenda is the Elias, the approval of the 2023 budget.
Okie dokie. After that sexy thing, this is gonna be pretty dry. All right, so it's on page 20 in your packet. That's tab 8, page 20. There's a summary. Just as a refresher, you guys last visited the budget back on June 8th. We made one change. We increased the fuel by $15,000. So the budget that went out to the entities totaled $9,644,056. That's a 2.16% increase over last year, or this year, I should say. We had the public hearing on July 13th, and it's now time to adopt. No comments, no concerns, nothing. Haven't heard a thing from anybody. So it's ready to go.
Great. At this time, unless someone has questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the budget for next year.
Second.
Leo makes a motion to approve the budget. Second?
Second.
Gabby seconds that. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Let the record show it passes unanimously. Thank you all. Elias, we're gonna go on to the investment policy.
Yep, tab 9, page 21, quarterly investment report. Where do I begin with this? So for the quarter, we had an average of, it goes up and down throughout the quarter, but it averaged at about $6 million to invest. It earned in percentages, it earned 0.55%, so like a 0.5%. We have a benchmark, the 3 months Treasury bill, and that was nearly twice of what we actually achieved because it's going up so quickly, 1.08%. So we were at 0.5 and Treasury was at about 1. Let's see, over that period of time, we were fully collateralized. So in dollars, it translated into, and if you look at page 23, you can see this better. The economic value of what we earned was $8,260 on $6 million for a quarter. I mean, that's pretty sad, but it looks like those days are starting to go behind us now. If you look at the previous quarter, we only earned $1,400.
Yes.
So the rates are going up. Unfortunately, inflation has been up, but the rates are going back up again. We will lag. The market will go up faster than we will because we have old securities that we have to work out of the portfolio.
LA was saying that if you give him the money, that he'll give more interest to you all.
Properly.
Yeah, but you can invest in things we can't.
No, he's gonna abscond with the money, and that's the end of the discussion.
Oh, well, then he better invest in my fund.
Okay, is that it, Elias?
That's it.
All right. We don't need a motion to that effect. Do we anything on this, Elias?
You don't have to unless you want to. It's not required of this.
Okay. Let's move on into the executive session. We have nothing in the executive session. It's for Mr. Canlis.
Is this one?
was no action taken in executive session. Now back to item number 12, discussion on the 23-24 reappraisal plan, Ronnie.
Letty,
He's not here yet.
Letty?
Letty,
Letty,
she's coming back.
The only one that didn't come back was Letty. Maybe she knew we were gonna call on her.
well, she knew. You can start with Sarah.
No, we'll just wait for her.
Somebody call Letty?
Does Letty know we're back in session?
She's running.
She's coming, she's
She's been running late all morning.
Oh, man, that she just,
She
she did.
called in early this morning, said she was running late. And she's still running late. You can hear the footsteps. Letty, you're up on the podium.
You're up, Letty. Don't sit down.
Take your time,
Okay,
because you're running late.
okay, we have the reappraisal plan. It's required that we, do it every 2 years. So this is for 23-24, and this entails all departments. So you can have residential, commercial, personal property.
Letty, speak into the microphone.
There.
She's nervous.
There you go. Okay, so in here, you're gonna find residential and all the defined areas that we're going to be evaluating. You have commercial, you have personal property, and also TY Picket. So and we also have the timelines for every department. So if y'all get a chance to look at it.
This is a great summary of what we do. If y'all want to pick something up and read it sometime about just exactly what our appraisal district does, this tells you in detail.
Is this posted on the website by chance?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Every year, once it's adopted, it is put in the downloads resources.
And thank you for the executive summary, Letty.
Oh, okay. Any questions?
Does it mention Ronnie buying breakfast and lunch for the board?
It's not on there yet.
Is there any questions for Ms. Letty? And if you have an opportunity, it's read the executive summary, and it'll really give you an idea of how well run this appraisal district is. And I don't say that lightly. It's very well run. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Before we go anywhere else, normally I don't, but I will. Christy Hill, can you stand up, please?
Sound like a chicken there.
And I just want to let y'all know, Christy Hill's in charge of the exemption department. And she's the one who's been working with the Kalan people, Paul Chapa and Peter. And she's running a very good department. Now, when Christy took over a couple of years ago, I came in 12. Most of the people started to retire in the exemptions department. How many staff people you got? 19, 20? I'm sorry? 11. Okay. You might get another one. Of those that retired, actually, when she came on, we had people working there with less than 5 years. Completely new. Compared to the people that were there for years that have retired. Diana did a very good job of re-instructing the people as to what they need to do. Diana retired. She took over, and it continues to do the good work that we do. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm sure Paul and Peter appreciated the work that you and the staff did with them as well. Okay?
I want to thank her too, because Christy and I have lots of conversations. So it's like, Christy, help!
Thank you.
So yeah, she does phenomenal.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Okay, TLO, Ms. Nowak, AKA, oh no, never mind.
And before she gets started, I want to say a couple of things about Miss Terry. This year has been a very interesting year with complaints.
Good adjective.
But not with the appraiser. Basically, it has been with ARB board members. And, you know, she has done a very, very good job of putting out fires for us.
Thank you.
Whether it be the ARB or even with our staff. And this is what, your first year?
Yes,
there?
sir.
First year, right?
Yes, sir.
And she's done a very good job, just so you know, so go ahead.
Thank you.
Terry.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Such a good job that I forgot to bring my report with me, but I know what it says. In the complaint department, I noted in there when I had, emailed the information to Judge Valdez that has apparently, that path has been rerouted a little bit, and that will be taken care of next month, correct? Okay. So you guys all know about that. As far as the ARB is concerned, they held the last hearings, which were all write-ins, which are very boring. They did those on the 18th, turned the rolls over to Mr. Canales and Mr. Causey on the 19th. So they are done until September. They worked really, really hard. I mean, there were several days, well, I don't even know how many days you guys had 5 panels. And thank you for letting us use your boardroom for that. But there were many nights when they were here past 6 o'clock. I think some nights until about 7:30 or 8. So they worked very, very hard, and for the most part, with the exception of a couple, did a very good job. Well, we know who they are, but anyway. But it was an interesting year. It was, they were very busy, and, some people calling just to vent, and that's fine. And some just calling for information. So, but the appraisers also, I want to say, did a fabulous job this year. They were on top of everything. We ran into a few snags, but they just did a fabulous job this year. I will probably next month ask you to consider increasing the number of auxiliaries for the ARB. It won't affect the budget at all, but for instance, when you have 5 panels, or when they have 5 panels, that's 16 people. Right now, there are only 18 members between regular board and auxiliary. That means if somebody gets sick or for some reason is unavailable, they are down to bare bones. And there were several days when they were sweating it out a little bit because somebody was sick or had a doctor's appointment or whatever. So I'm going to ask you next month to increase the auxiliaries by maybe 3. Again, it won't cost anything budget-wise. It's just more people available for when they have those 5 panels. And just based on what I saw this year, I really think we're going to be busy again next year. So they're probably going to run 5 panels more often than they did this year.
Okay.
But I'll put that, now that I've already said it, I'll put that in my my report for next month. But
Does anyone have any questions for, yes, sir?
I just have a comment. One of the commissioners, county commissioners, had a complaint from a taxpayer that they forwarded to me, very, very irate. And so I answered the best I could on what was currently going on, but I gave her all your information, and she wrote me back a very, very nice email stating about how helpful you had been.
oh, thank you.
And how much she appreciated you taking the time to let her know what she needed to do.
She was very nice.
And
She's a
yeah,
very nice
she
lady.
From her first email to her last email, there was a significant change, and I appreciate it very much.
And that happens. Like I said, they call or they email me, and they, what they really want to do is vent, and that's fine. And usually you can talk them down a little bit. Some not so much, but you can't please everybody all the time.
That's right. I think she just needed
But
some
thank
good
you. I
information.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Ella, you have something?
Anybody else?
No. My only question or concern was about the board member that on the complaints or whatever. About that.
I have received another one with concerning the same board member, and I believe I have a voicemail with another one with the same board member.
So what are we gonna do?
It's just,
I don't think that we have the ability to do anything.
Yeah,
I think Ronnie's got to take care of that internally, is that correct, Ronnie?
well, what we've discussed is that she will make contact with that member and give it a choice that it'll be on the agenda for September. He can either resign or be removed, one of the two. Then if he chooses to not want to resign, then the board has the right to remove, then he will have the right to appeal. I think it'll be appealed to the judge. And at that point, the judge can determine for sure what's gonna happen with that board member.
Okay.
And like I said before, from the beginning, that this year was a little different for us. Carol, you know, our ARB chairman, has spoken to that individual several times. We've had issues with him, but it got to a point now where it's too many complaints.
And,
I can tolerate maybe 2 or 3 complaints, but not more than that.
and these are legitimately excessive. Is,
Yeah.
oh, very much. I mean, I listened to recordings of the hearings and I just,
So now we know the
Grand.
road that's paved in front of us, and we can just take appropriate action at the proper time, and that would be incumbent upon Carol, Terry, and Ronnie, and then, but we know what we're going to do on that issue.
yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay.
That's what I understand.
And Joe,
All
I
right.
think I would suggest that if he or she does not resign, that it be placed on next month's agenda.
It is. It
Okay.
is. Yes, sir.
All right, anything
Okay.
else for Terry?
No? Okay. Thank you
ma'am.
all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Keep up
All
the-
right.
Thank you.
Now, the next item on the agenda is the Chief Appraiser's Report. Ronnie?
Yeah, it'll be very short. We got the certification rolled out of the way. Thank you, Ms. ARB Chairman, for expediting that. That was on time. The other thing that I'll let you all know, and a little bit more as to what Terry was referring to, this boardroom was used as a fifth panel room during the season. Actually, during the last 2 weeks, I think it was.
I think it was more than that.
Yeah, it was more
like
than that,
3 or
but-
4.
But we had a total of a little over how many that we had over last year, like 6,000-7,000?
I think that's what I
Yeah,
heard.
and that just tells you that we'd probably be inundated again with about the same number, a little bit more than what we had this year. Over the last few years, it's been increasing on a yearly basis.
Yeah, this is the
Once
worst I've seen.
COVID was done with, this year we were inundated with, and we were expecting it. One was because of the values that have gone up pretty much. Residential went from anywhere from 20 to 26%. Commercial department with Willie Carrington and his staff, we were up to about as much as 36% increase just on commercial properties. We anticipate, after it's all said and done, I think the clock's already ticking for the people to start filing their new lawsuits. Last year we had, after certification, we had what, Tom, about 100?
Yeah.
120 new lawsuits. So we're looking at about the same thing again, probably for the months of October to December, for them to file their new lawsuits. Other than that, staff did a very commendable job this year, and it's always almost the same year after year, that they do a very good job as to what they do. We've gotten a little bit better for it. They're more tolerant, more patient, and actually a lot more transparent with the taxpayer. Taxpayers many times might not like what they got, but they appreciate the service that they got from the appraiser. This year, I didn't get complaints from the taxpayers. The only complaints that I got was through Terry, through the ARB member. And that's why I said this year was a little different. And again, you know, I want to commend the staff for the work that they did. We got everything out on time, with plenty of time. And that says that these guys are getting better. And Don, I appreciate the work that you do, sir, as being the assistant chief. He hardly ever gets any recognition, but I tell you what, Don is very well respected here with staff. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he expedites things that need to get done pretty quick here. Makes my job a lot easier. Other than that, we have the ad valorem legal seminar in San Antonio, August 24th through the 26th. And then we go into Houston for the 28th through the 31st of August. So saying that, I want to say thank you to the staff for the work that they do. Do y'all have any questions?
Ronnie, I just have a comment. I want to thank everybody, the staff as well. The appraisal roll that came over to the tax office was just super clean this year. We had very few corrections that had to be made, and it was probably the cleanest we've ever seen it. And really proud of the work that's been done, and you guys have done an amazing job.
Great.
Well, these guys, you know, they really, that was one of them right there. That's Daniel and then Neil. They made sure that things
Yeah,
got done the way they're
They
supposed
had
to.
it cleaned up pretty good.
Now,
Oh, it was excellent.
saying this, I want to let y'all know that we're probably going to be looking at a software vendor for the near future. We don't have monies for it this year. The budgets are been approved for 22, 23, and we'll probably be looking at it for 24. So just so y'all know, we have had some glitches with the current software vendors that we have. And what they're doing too is, I think they're also outsourcing some of the work that they're doing. So I really can't hold them directly accountable like we used to. So that's getting out of hand as well. So just so y'all know, we'll be looking at a software vendor. That's gonna be a large budget increase once we get into that. And if it works out, fine. If it doesn't, well, we just keep doing what we do.
Okay.
And then, Chief, if I may, as to each of you that represent tax entities, everybody got a pretty nice increase.
Talk about-
Tax entities this year should be very happy with the work of the appraisals.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and talk to all of your school board members, city council, I already did with some of them for them to actually use the system to lower the rate, because that's what will make and break the future of the system itself. You know, if you don't use it when you are up, the state alone has 27 billion surplus that they don't know where it came from right now. I mean, it's probably oil and gas and inflation related, but that's 20 billion, you know? So it goes probably for every city, for every county, so we need to talk to them that they lower the rates, because that's the vehicle to make it dealable for the normal people, so.
That's exactly right, and conversely, they keep the rate where it is because without raising rates, they get more money. So, we
They should
just need
lower
to
it.
convey that
Yeah.
you need to start thinking about lowering
Yep, exactly,
the rate.
yeah,
Don't talk about,
yeah,
we're keeping the same tax rate, that's a bunch of nonsense.
yeah.
Well, statutorily, they have to lower the rates this year to keep from going over their tax rate caps.
This year.
They have to.
because
It's
so
not,
high.
it's not a
This year.
choice. Or they will be in a rollback, because they have
I
a
know that,
3.5%
but that's
levy
this
cap.
year.
Yeah.
And they've had the same opportunity
Yeah,
for years.
yeah. exactly.
Now, with that being said, thanks, Gabby. With that being said, remember all of us as board members have that responsibility to Angela Jackson to get whatever it is that she needs.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah, the cybersecurity thing. And do you have to have a computer for that? Yes. Oh, okay. And so, okay.
Commodore
Other-
64s don't count.
Other than that, don't forget that, please, I spoke with Angela earlier this week, and she really wanted to make sure that everyone does their deal. With that, any other items for next regular meeting?
We do that online, right?
Yes. Yes. Any other items for next regular meeting? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Butch,
Beautiful.
seconds from Gabby, all in favor, aye. Thank you so very much for coming today. It's 10:31.
Mr. Whitley over here.
Oh, no, 10:30, okay. Ellie, don't forget.
Oh, I have, have you done that online?